So I guess we'll start with, obviously you saw DC twice this season. You saw Arlington once. Um, all three games you had success passing the ball. For a while there, and I think going into that St. Louis Arlington game, we had said that the Renegades had the number one pass defense in the league at that point. You guys didn't have too much trouble in the pass game. DC obviously had a good pass defense at the beginning of the year and then kind of tailed off as the season went on. What did you see? We'll start with DC's defense. What did you see from a Greg Williams scheme? Obviously, they love to rush six, especially on third downs. They play a 4-2-5, right? And they like to drop the safety. What do you see from them that Luis Perez can maybe take advantage of in his fourth time starting against DC this season?
Yeah, with DC, I was looking back at my notes and just kind of remembering those games, but 98% of the time, whatever you see pre-snap is not what it's going to be post-snap. So you can't get caught up in the pre-snap. You want to see, what they're lined up in, because a lot of times what they line up in pre-snap tells what they're going to get to post-snap or to on first and second down if you get some yardage. Now he will also blitz if he has a positive play on first down. He has no problem blitzing on second down, and then third down he's going to play a ton of man, especially if it's third and short. He loves playing man coverage, whether it's just bringing five, maybe bringing six, but he likes playing man coverage. I think with them, he's going to bring cover zero, right? Like he does it all the time. He's going to bring pressure. If you, as a Arlington offense, Luis Perez, if they can burn cover zero, Greg gets out of it. I don't know if you'll have the clip, but we're playing at DC the first game. We had it planned, and they went cover zero, and I ended up checking to what they thought was going to be a max protection deal, and we knew, hey, the safety's going to basically, we call point the tight end, and when the tight end blocks out, the safety green dogs blitzes. So he sees the tight end block, and then boom, he's the add-on guy. And we ended up acting like we were going to block, and then Jake Sutherland slipped, and I hit him. And so we checked to it. After we hit him on that, he never got in cover zero ever again. I mean, it was kind of crazy how different he played us the second game because of us burning him in the first game multiple times when they did bring pressure. So I think his mindset changed of, all right, well, I'm not going to put myself in situations like the second game. They played us a ton of cover two. It didn't matter what down and distance it was. He was going to say, hey, we believe that, St. Louis is not going to be able to run the ball well enough if we play just our base defense, cover two, and then let's don't give up the big play. Let's try to keep everything underneath, and let's rally to the football and make tackles. And when he plays that way, he causes you as an offense to have to play very patiently and not force any throws. And Luis Perez has to be that type of quarterback today, and just take what they give him.
Yeah, so we broke down Perez pretty heavily in our preview episode. I don't know how much of that game you got to see between Arlington and DC week 9. Obviously, that was when you guys had a huge one against Seattle following it. He seemed very comfortable. I think it was probably one of his best games of the season. He was in command of the offense with about 5 minutes left in the game. They're down by 11. It seems like they just went into 2-minute. Luis, that was his second start in Arlington, and he was directing traffic, knowing where everybody should be. Tempo was real fast, and he was able to lead them to a 17-point fourth quarter comeback and end up forcing overtime. The Arlington offense that you guys saw first half of the season was a little different.
Yeah.
They were trying to find a balance, but they just didn't have They just didn't have it for whatever reason at that point. They were struggling offensively. Bringing Luis in, obviously different team. When you guys played them, you would have played them twice. I guess the first meeting, I don't know if he went most of that game or if it was Brett Hundley, from what I can remember. I think he maybe came
in DC. I mean, in Vegas.
Yeah, the way he started the game, right? And then they brought Brett Hundley in.
Yeah, they brought Brett in basically the second half.
Right.
But he started the first half.
I think that was Luis's last game in Vegas.
Yeah, it was.
Now, just kind of watching some of him, and you mentioned in our interview, liking to see how the quarterbacks will talk and how they lead a drive down the field. The Arlington offense, talk about their balance and maybe some of the things they do different from you guys and what their best chance is to score points in this game.
Well, Matty, I'll tell you the craziest thing. I was talking to Bruce about this whenever Arlington played Houston. Arlington literally took our offensive game plan, and I love Coach Hayes, but I think we played, I would say, Houston from one of the best standpoints from an offensive game plan against their defense. Really took advantage of how they play, and Arlington literally did exactly what we did. I mean, we were sitting there watching it, and it was like they'd run a play, and it's like, daggum, like that's the same play we ran against them. So I thought against Houston, they looked like a completely different offense than some of the schemes they had been running. And now they're a West Coast offensive scheme team. That's where Coach Hayes, that's his background. He was with me in Cincinnati during my time there. So he comes from the Grudens, the Hugh Jacksons, so I think, you have to be able to run the ball and establish a run against DC's defense. Like you have to, because then it takes pressure. Now it makes Greg think, all right, do I sit back and just keep playing this cover two, or do I drop down and now we have to mix up and get more guys in the box? Because Greg relies on his front seven, his box guys to be able to, hey, I can rush four a lot of times, and I know my guys up front are going to get pressure on the quarterback. I know my linebackers are going to be in the right spots to make tackles when it comes to the run game. So I'm fine to give up 2 yards here and there. Like where he starts to overthink and get into some things that they're not used to is when you do hit some big runs on them. And now he has to play some different deals and play a lot more man, which he doesn't want to play a ton of man throughout the whole game. He likes playing zones. He likes being able to show one way, spin, and bring another. So I think Arlington has to establish a run game, take pressure off Louise, and if they can do that, then it comes down to, all right, Louise just taking what the defense gives you, even if you have to end on a punt. Like if you can end every possession on a kick, it's not always bad. And so hopefully, for their sake, Louise can do that, and their offensive scheme can, be well for him.
Yeah, he's definitely a very prepared quarterback. And when you give a prepared quarterback a fourth try at a team, I can only imagine some of the things that he's cooking up, especially after that Houston game. I noticed a moment late in the DC game against Arlington week 9. It was late in the game. They're driving to try to tie the game. They got the 4th and 15. It's now 26-23. They had 2 timeouts because the clock management from Perez was phenomenal. He was not going to take a timeout unless they needed to do. And he says, I don't want to throw the ball here. And they're trying to call a pass. He's like, if you see it open, take it. If not, throw it away. Perez is like, I don't want to throw the ball. He ends up running it out of bounds. They get the field goal. So like certain things, I wonder if he'll be more aggressive this time, knowing it's just so hard. Like you almost have to stay aggressive against DC. But Arlington, obviously, we talked about the DC defense and the Arlington offense. I want to kind of flip sides of the ball. The DC offense and how they might be unique. You talked about the Jay Gruden coaching tree in the West Coast and what Coach Hayes comes from. This DC offense, it's always felt to me all year like it's been unique. Like we talked in our interview about the air raids and what they do in Houston, what they do in Seattle, what they do in Vegas, Orlando, right? DC with Coach Keiss, they've always kind of taken a different approach, and it's kind of RPO heavy. What does DC do, and what can Arlington do on defense to kind of slow that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're going to have to play man coverage, and it's not a knock on Jordan, but DC is a running offense. They're going to run the football. If you can stop the run or eliminate the big runs, because when they get the runs that are 20-yard type runs, like they're a different offense when they're in that situation. I think as an Arlington defense, you have to go into this game with a mindset of, okay, if we lose, we'll lose by Jordan Ta'amu beating us with his arm. Like we'll take that chance, and that's not a knock on Jordan, but I think anybody in the league that has faced DC will tell you, like, hey, their running game is premier. All right, it's the top in the league, and you have to stop the run. If you don't stop the run, then you're in for a long night. And then it allows them to establish their RPO game. And now they're seeing man coverage. Now they got guys out wide that can run by people. So now you're playing press man. Even if you're playing off man, you're giving them slants. If you play press, now they're taking some go shots. And Jordan's done a really good job of hitting those when he's seen man coverage. So I think this DC offense is it's put up a ton of points all year long, and it's been huge for him for sure. I just be honest with you, Matt. I don't know if Arlington can really do enough to really keep them in this game for 4 quarters. I really don't. And I know they played close last time, and it came down to overtime, but I think DC was in that mindset of, hey, we're already in. If we should get the first round at home, and maybe they just weren't themselves, but maybe Arlington comes out and plays different. But the DC offense right now is, I think, clicking, and I think they're going to be tough to stop. So.
Yeah, and you're right. Back in week 9, that was a pretty big point spread, and I just figured it was too big. It seemed to me like DC came out, they had a ton of defensive penalties. I think almost 40 yards in penalties on the first drive. They had weird stuff going on where they'd call a timeout on a 4th and 3 to get personnel in, and then coming out of the timeout, you still get a 12-man on the field, which is a nightmare. They had DPI after DPI holding. So there was a lot of chances in that game for Arlington to win. And you felt like Arlington was going full out there, and they still weren't able to do enough defensively. And, De'Aaron King, another guy that can kind of come in and pace Jordan a little bit. Touching on the Arlington defense, right? Just a little interesting here. They do lead the league in takeaways.
Yeah.
And they have some vets like Will Hill back there, great player, former 2nd-round pick. Some injuries, but, some good players on that side of the ball. When you guys were going into, obviously it was a while ago at this point, but when you guys were going into your matchup with Arlington, what was it like? What compared to DC's defense, like all the things that we're just talking about? Is there anything special that they do that DC should watch for, or can DC just play their game and operate in their game plan?
Yeah, I think DC just plays their game. Listen, I felt they were very basic. Arlington's defense, it was cover 3 week. They would mix in some quarters coverage,
and Anthony Beck doesn't know whether to challenge or not, because you don't really know in week 3 if they're looking at it or not. Like that was unclear. We didn't know if it was a booth initiated review and you had to burn the challenge, or you could hold on to it. Something that Coach Stoops did in week 9, the chains were off. And I don't know if you saw that, but
No, it didn't.
he lit up the official on a 4th and 1. DC, they blitzed and they ended up very close to the line to gain. And Arlington, believed they had a first down. Coach Stoops went out and he looked at the chain and he was like, it should be a first down. It was a booth initiated review, and the call on the field stood that it was 4th down. By not challenging that, he then held on to his challenge for the final play of the game, where and they ended up extending that game and being able to play for the tie. So, yeah, back in week 3, there was a lot going on. You guys had him again, week 5? The 2 big runs.
Yep.
Right. So it's just these plays that can get you. So I guess my last question would be, like, you touched on a lot of it already, but if you were part of this game plan, and had a chance to maybe do something differently against DC this time around, what would the main focuses be?
I think, us staying. I think if you're Arlington's offense, I think you got to have some RPOs in the game plan. I do think DC's linebackers are so aggressive to when they see run, they flow over the top. I think you got to have some RPOs, whether it's also under center. I think some type of counter runs to where you get them flowing one way and then we're coming back the other way. So use their aggressiveness against them. I think getting much from a secondary standpoint, showing one coverage, trying to run back and get into position to get a defensive pass interference and get the ball moving that way. And then I think when you do that, you allow DC such a start to argue amongst each other. I think you get in their head and they play a little out of themselves in that aspect. So I think as Arlington, you can't come in this game scared. If you turn the ball over, you turn the ball over, but you got to be willing to take some chances and do some different things and put pressure on DC in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. They cannot live in 3rd and long. Obviously,
No.
That's something that a lot of pretty much every team that goes for, but especially DC, because breaking down, some of their film, they brought 7 at times. So they do get really super aggressive there on 3rd down. Well, AJ, I wish ESPN would see this and they would do kind